Thanks everybody for participating in this sort of unusual format. And Donnie, thank you so much for all of your help with getting this set up. Today we have a pretty full agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and appreciation to everyone for the slight delay. We'll start first with the Hyde County Health Department. Luana?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for inviting me to your meeting tonight. I think I'm supposed to speak a little bit about COVID-19. So I'll go ahead and begin with that. COVID-19, of course, is a coronavirus that affects the respiratory system of individuals, and most people will recover. Some can become severely ill, and then unfortunately there are those that die. It's transferred by respiratory droplets, which can come through coughs, sneezes, and even talking. And then, of course, personal contact with surfaces that may contain respiratory droplets. So now I'm going to give you some updates on the numbers for North Carolina as of 11 o'clock today. There have been 5,465 laboratory confirmed cases. Of those laboratory confirmed cases, there have been 452 individuals hospitalized and 131 deaths. I'm very glad to say that as of today, Hyde County has no laboratory confirmed cases, but that does not mean that we don't have it in our community. We could actually have individuals who just have no symptoms or very slight symptoms and are staying at home. The health department is monitoring testing, and testing has slowed down tremendously. The state lab now requires individuals to meet certain criteria in order to be tested. And that criteria is to have symptoms and either be hospitalized, live in a congregate living facility, such as a correctional facility or a long-term care facility, to have symptoms and be a healthcare worker or a first responder, or to have symptoms and have a high risk of becoming severely ill if you were to develop the coronavirus. Commercial labs are still performing tests, and of course they don't have to jump through the hoops as severely as the state lab does. If you have a confirmed case, you are asked to isolate at home for 7 days from 48 hours prior to the onset of symptoms, and 3 days being fever-free without the use of medicine. And contacts to cases are required to be quarantined for 14 days. Yesterday, Governor Cooper gave a press conference in which he hinted at the fact that he may be opening up our state slowly. He did not give a date. He did not say definitely this was happening, but reading between the lines, that's what it appears like is coming. Secretary Cohen spoke as well, and she stated that really what's needed is for us to have infrastructure in place in order to handle increased testing that will transpire once we rev up tracing as well. She said today that death rates, case counts, and hospitalizations will be monitored in order for the governor to make the decision to open us back up. We want to, as public health, continue to encourage everybody to socially distance, stay home when you're sick, wash your hands, practice respiratory etiquette, which is coughing or sneezing in your elbow. Follow the recommendations that Hyde County has issued, as well as the governor. And we also encourage you to get all of your information from reputable sources such as NCDHHS, the CDC website, and of course, the Hyde County Health Department website. That is a very brief presentation, but I feel like you all are inundated with information about COVID-19. So I just wanted to scratch the surface and tell you some brief points. and then I'll be glad to ask questions if you have any.
Okay, so we'll do a call to the public for any questions right now. Do we have any questions for Hyde County Health Department?
Reminder to everybody, there is a bit of a delay, so bear with us while she gets the questions.
Does not appear that we have any questions at this moment. Luana, thank you very much for joining us today. And I'll be sure to include all of the facts that you just said and reputable sources in our meeting notes.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we're going to hear from Earl Irwin. She is Ocracoke Mental Health Support Person. Hi, Earl.
Hello. So many of you know that I came to the island in February. I was brought to the island by the Ocracoke Interfaith Relief and Recovery Team through a grant, or assisted by a grant through the Outer Banks Community Foundation. I'm a retired clinical nurse specialist, and I came to the island for 6 months to provide mental health support and education to island residents as they recover from Hurricane Dorian. Well, now, in addition to those stressors, of course, residents' lives and livelihoods are impacted by the COVID-19 restrictions. And so I'm now also available to help people deal with those stressors. These COVID-19 restrictions mean that I can no longer meet folks in their homes or in an office, but I continue to be available by phone, text, email, or video chat, or to sit outside or walk together while honoring physical distancing restrictions. I invite residents to consider me as a resource as you cope with these surreal times and the unexpected impacts to your lives. This service is provided through OIRRT and OBCF at no charge to residents. All counseling is confidential. 3 months remain of my 6 months of service. So I hope people who have been thinking about maybe getting in touch with me will go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity while in this next 3 months. I'm available by phone, text, or email. We'll go ahead and that mental health line upon which I can be reached is 703-863-1243. And I'm also available by email, Earl Irwin, my name, EARLEIRWIN @gmail.com. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Give us just a second, Earl.
Earl, while we're waiting for questions to come in for you, is Luana still on? Probably not.
Luana still here?
Hi, Luana. We had a late delay question for you. If I can pose that to you, there was a question. How many care assisted in Hyde County? I guess that was asking how many people in care are care assisted in Hyde County.
I'm not sure what that question is.
Came from Peter Vankovich. Peter, if you can clarify.
Okay, we haven't heard back from Peter yet, but right now we have a request for Earl. They have asked that you post your business card to the Facebook local page.
Okay. I
And
can
then the
do that.
question, Peter's come back with his question now, and he says, how many are in care assisted living facilities in Hyde County?
Okay, so that would be Cross Creek Nursing Home, and I don't have a specific number, but I will be glad to get that information and share it with you, Peter. I could let you know tomorrow if that's not too late.
Thank you. Thank you both, and thank you, Earl.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening.
Next up, we're going to move on to our small business support folks that have joined us. Ginger O'Neill is joining us from the Small Business Center, College of the Albemarle. Michael Twitty and Matthew Byrne from the Small Business and Technology Development Center, or SBTDC. And Barry Ryan of the North Carolina Royal Center will also is also joining us. So we're happy to have them all. And Michael has a little bit of a presentation, and they'll be able to field some questions and give us some information in relation to your business. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe I've pulled that up. Let me hit share screen. Is that PowerPoint showing up on y'all's video, on y'all's screen?
No.
Okay. I'll give it just.
Promise we practiced this before we started.
Yeah, we sure did.
We're all friends.
I'm hitting. Well, anyway, and it worked well good. I'm trying to get y'all back now. Let me see if I can get back to y'all's. That's it right there. You're sharing your screen.
Oh, there it goes.
We got it now.
It's loading now, Michael. Yeah.
Michael, I think you chose the wrong application when you went to share it, because it's sharing your
Okay.
thread. If you choose the PowerPoint as your window or the application, then it should load up for you.
And that's what's showing on my screen. I thought it should come up with y'all's. That's back to there. Share screen. Well, ago when I hit share, And applicant window.
There you go.
Got it.
Is it up on there?
Perfect.
Okay. Good. Yeah, well,
Yep.
I've just used up 3.5 of my 4 minutes. So anyway, I thank y'all for allowing us to come and speak. We've been looking for an opportunity to get in front of some faces in Ocracoke. And I won't go through all this. This PowerPoint piece, and I'll be glad I shared it with everyone setting the meeting up, and you're welcome to share it. And this, it goes through all the various, it talks about Ginger, about the Small Business Center and the SBTDC. And then it goes into all the various funding sources. And so there's a tremendous amount of information here. Y'all been seeing a lot of this, through various emails and things that are shared. But I'll go back just for a second. Matthew and I work for the Small Business and Technology Development Center. We are a part of the university system. All the university campuses has a Small Business and Technology Development Center. We are partially funded through the U.S. Small Business Administration. And anytime a disaster or anything like this happens, we go kind of change our, go into disaster assistance work. And we were down on Ocracoke quite a bit in the fall after Dorian, working with businesses, seeking to get applications for either disaster lending or other sources like that Barry has through the Rule Center and Thread Capital and all. But our primary role is we provide one-on-one confidential to business clients seeking to assistance with doing their business lending. And that's what we've been working from our homes for the last 4 weeks, answering calls, explaining about the various loans programs of the SBA under the COVID-19 resources, and trying to help people work their way through the loan applications. And that's been a primary thing that we've been doing. I'm going to take that off for just a second. Did that stop sharing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I'm going to, did I do that wrong again? I don't want to, I was going to pull up, and let me, for Matthew, if you want to speak and share a little bit, if you would, and we'll go right on to Ginger.
Certainly.
Matthew's been the primary person working on a lot of the business lending, especially in the Dare Hyde County area. I'm sorry, Matthew, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think primarily the folks on Ocracoke, unfortunately, are going to find themselves in the realm of working with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is kind of fallen in behind the PPP program. And unfortunately, they're running out of funding. That's been announced that they've shut down the pipeline on both of those programs until Congress gets back in session and adds money to those programs. But the functionality of the payroll protection program as it relates to Ocracoke is a little trouble. Timing of when they're looking at revenues and payroll, and with the damage and the occurrence of Hurricane Dorian, that kind of muddies up the water there quite a bit. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can get some good quality small business administration experienced disaster loan folks with a good deal of empathy to be able to handle the impact of this event on top of what happened during Dorian, because by and large, the vast majority of folks never really quite got their head above water, and then it was this event, they're ready to push their head back underwater before they could catch a breath. So it really is going to fall hopefully to Congress and adding funding too, so that we can get to the level of being able to make individual cases with economic injury at a level that doesn't really tie directly to payroll, because there's a lot of other things in play on Ocracoke Island than just salary dollars. So that's in what lies some of the difficulty with working with some of the folks down there.
Okay. Is our website showing up on y'all's screen?
No.
Oh, okay. I pulled up our website just to show the resources and everything that are there. So anyway, Ginger, if you want to go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So this is Ginger O'Neill, and I am the director for the community college system, College of the Albemarle. There's a director hosted in every community college across the state. We are the largest in that we cover 7 counties in northeastern North Carolina. Hyde County, although not being one of my counties, I am part of SBTDC's disaster recovery team, so that has allowed me to engage and work with many of the clients and small business owners on the island. And since I am formerly a native, it's very near and dear to my heart to be there and assist in every avenue that I possibly can. I'll reiterate what Matthew said, and I'm not going to go through this whole list. We're very disappointed today to hear that the EIDL, the $10,000 based on employee money, and the PPP has now come to a dead standstill. I have gotten a ton of information today, though, on grants, smaller pockets of money that may not help you do a total rebuild, but at least help some of our small businesses get some relief in the manner of paying for inventory that's already been ordered for the summer season. Rather than me go through this entire list, I'm looking at about 15 in front of me now. Google has grants, there's Verizon. I will share this email out to Sarah and Helena for them to disseminate. I have shared with some of my clients that I'm working with on Ocracoke that the SaveSmallBusiness.com will go live on April the 20th. So if you'll go on your computer and go to www.savesmallbusiness.com, you can enter your email. I have already done a search, and Ocracoke is applicable for that $5,000 grant program. And again, I am quite positive this will be on a first-come, first-served basis. But you can enter your email, and you will be prompted at 12 noon on April the 20th to go ahead and send your application in for that small pocket of money. In the meantime, Helena and Sarah both have my contact information, and I will most definitely be on hand to answer any questions and provide any assistance in partnership with Michael and Matthew.
Okay.
Michael.
Yeah. Thanks, Ginger, so much. And I'm glad to have Barry Ryan from the Rule Center with us on this call as well. Barry was with us when we first went over to Ocracoke after Hurricane Dorian. We were able to get on the island thanks to Chris, and he through his work with the Rule Center and Thread Capital worked very closely with us down there. So Barry, if you'd like to speak a little bit about, if you would, about the Rule Center and Thread Capital.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael and Ginger and Matthew and Sarah and everyone else for hosting tonight. Couple things, just updates to provide to folks about the Rural Center and our loan capital. First thing I'll mention is that in general, the Rural Center has stopped doing normal small business lending activities because it's a tough time to be starting a business right now. There are a couple exceptions to that. The first of which being we're still actively lending for businesses that were affected by Hurricane Dorian, Florence, and even Matthew. So those Dorian clients just had actually approved a wire to a client today. So those Dorian affected clients, if your business was affected by Dorian, which is just about every business on Ocracoke, that might be your best avenue for getting access to resources right now. And so we have some good dozen or so businesses that we've worked with and would be happy to work with more. That eligibility still applies even though we're in a new disaster now. So that's something that may be a good resource for affected businesses. So Ginger, Michael, Matthew are all good resources to help folks understand that program and learn more about it. And then the other one I'll mention, with the COVID-19 disaster, we're running a statewide program called the North Carolina COVID-19 Rapid Recovery Loan Program. And that is available to businesses. We've actually already had 8 businesses from Ocracoke apply. And so the one thing I'll say about that, the caveat I have to give, just like everyone else, we've been oversubscribed. We've had more applications than we do have funding for. We're hopeful that we'll have more funding soon. And so that's one way that folks can apply for assistance. Those are quick loans up to $50,000 to help businesses get back on their feet. And we're hopeful, and we'll be in touch with y'all when we have more money available and can encourage folks to apply. But until then, I feel like just about every business on the island would be affected by Hurricane Dorian and eligible for those programs. And we'd be happy also to take a look at businesses even that we've already talked to make sure that we're being responsive and helping out.
Thank you, Barry. And thank you to all of you. I have some questions coming in. So if it's okay, can we move to the question portion?
Please.
Okay, we have a question. If you have an EIDL for Dorian, is it possible to add on to that loan for this event, or would you have to fill out a separate application?
Matthew, you want to answer that?
If you have an economic injury or a disaster loan in the works, I think from Dorian, and you haven't, excuse me, and you haven't completed that whole process, I think it's very likely that you could work with that caseworker at the SBA and wrap this event into that, because I think it would be cleaner for them to have one facility to manage and get the business through both events. And because the goal is to get everybody back up and running with as many employees as they had pre-event, and that could be pre-Dorian event. So the hope is to get things put back on the track and moving in the right direction. And I think if it makes good common sense, I think to combine those two things and provide one lump sum and one payment with it, I think would be the most beneficial to the business and probably operationally for the SBA, just given the volume of activity that's going on.
Matthew, would it be fair to say probably about the only way that could happen is if you get to the point where you're actually speaking and talking and working with an SBA loan officer?
Yes, sir. I think that's the case. And I think that's going to be the case with most of the economic injury disaster loans. I think that's why they've split them up, that they're going to allow the banks to marshal through the program that is the PPP or the payroll protection program, because that's a chef special, no substitutes, cookie cutter program. You qualify or you don't, you play by the rules or you don't get the forgiveness, and they can administer that at the bank level because it's being administered uniformly to every borrower out there through every federally insured institution, so that the next layer, the ones that get a little sticky or have a little bit of an opportunity to need to tell the story, where the payroll might not be the main issue that could get the business from one side to another. It could be a business that's has a large rent factor like Ocracoke Island, or it could be a manufacturer that has a lot of large equipment that has a hefty expense or payments on that equipment, where the payroll protection program isn't going to be as beneficial to that business. That's where economic injury is going to have the opportunity to look at what a normalized business operation looks like and what the impact of the event has had on those normalized operations, and have some discussion or negotiation of how to fill that gap in between, not replace all the profits, but put enough back in play to be able to get the business back up and running operationally and sustainable into the future.
Okay, good.
So I think yes, every economic injury disaster loan is ultimately going to have a caseworker assigned to it. That's going to be a massive undertaking, because it's not like one area or community has been impacted by an event, a storm. Just last week we had tornadoes. That's got a lot of people's attention currently. Dorian was out on Ocracoke Island. Each community that goes through one of those events knows the turmoil that it creates just in that isolated area, you multiply that by every community in every county in every state, and that's what's happening as a result of this event. So it's going to be a massive undertaking. It's going to take a good long while for them to work through the communication process on those economic injury loans, or they're going to have to develop a program that has a similar cookie cutter style to it that they can rapidly mass produce and be equitable with that. So that remains to be seen, because that program is still ink in the bottle. They really haven't quite finished writing the rules of how they're going to administer the funding of the economic injury disaster loans. They have been focused primarily on the mechanics of and getting as much money out as possible through that the payroll protection program. Enough so that they spent it all.
And if I
the SBA has done 14 years worth of loans in 14 days is the ramification of what's transpired. And I'll say it again. They've done in 14 business days, they've done what they have done in the past 14 years.
And with Barry on the phone, for the people in Ocracoke, I don't mean to take up too much time, but Matthew, a lot of the things that we've done in Ocracoke with the businesses down there, we've been able to utilize maybe 2 different funding sources. In other words, we've done some projects where it had either some SBA funding or some bank funding along with Thread Capital funding. But a lot of times there's not one source that can fund the whole project. A lot of times we've been able to almost satisfy the client's needs by maybe having multiple lending sources.
Right.
And the right hand and the left hand knows what's going on. If you just want to really touch on that, Matthew, because I think the things that's going to be beneficial from a capital standpoint in Ocracoke is being able to utilize more than just one source. And like if it's Thread Capital, if something with the revolving loan fund of Hyde County or anything new comes along, and some collaboration with SBA, that's going to be, and I know we're getting short on the timeline from the season, but if you just speak, Matthew, on it, like, I know we can't speak about any individual cases or anything, but how that's worked a little bit.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think there's just enough individuality to Ocracoke Island, and all of the businesses are so unique down there that there isn't a one-size-fits-all fix for anyone in particular down there. So every opportunity needs to be handled like a cobbler making a specific pair of shoes for that business, and they need to work with as many tools as they can. And we've been blessed to have the opportunity to work with the county and the revolving loan fund. We've had a tremendous amount of support from Thread Capital. The banks have been lukewarm in their response just because there's such uncertainty, and there's there's so much existing debt that it's difficult to layer additional debt from a bank perspective on top of that. So that can be difficult. And then the SBA disaster loans, at times like this, when there is a disaster and you have a disaster loan, you have to look at the debt relief program. That is incredibly benevolent of the SBA. If you have an SBA disaster loan, in addition to the fact that you might have the opportunity to defer that loan at the bank level for maybe 3 months, the SBA is going to actually physically pay the principal and interest on that note for 6 months following that deferment, or 6 months from the date of the event. So that's for a disaster. And I know there's a lot of folks down there that have layers of disaster loans. That's going to be incredibly beneficial to the folks on that island, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I'll just speak to Sarah and Helena for the people in Ocracoke Island. I know we can't get down there right now, but Ginger, Barry, and I, all of us are willing to help any way we can with businesses down there. But it's going to take, like I said, Matthew said, not one size fit all, but these different pieces can be put together to try to help one business at a time down there on Ocracoke, and we're glad and ready to help any way we can. I mean, we've been working distance from our homes doing these loans. I have worked it out, communicating with clients and transferring financial information back and forth so we can get an application together. So I just share with the people in Ocracoke and the businesses, we'll help any way we can.
Absolutely.
I know that everyone here is so grateful for that. I do have one more question. Looks like they just wanted confirmation on the April 20th deadline that you mentioned. I think, Ginger, that was you. That was for the Save Small Business.
Can you repeat that question? It broke off midway.
Sure. It looks like a confirmation of the Save Small Business program that you mentioned, just confirmation that the date is April 20th.
Yes, that's correct. It is April the 20th, and if they will just go to that savesmallbusiness.com site, they can, and I've already searched by zip code, as I said, so Ocracoke is applicable. They will just simply add their name, first and last name, and their telephone number and email address. And on the 20th, they should receive notification by message or email that the loan or the grant has now opened up. And from what I understand, it's going to be a very non-laborious process, very simple and quick.
And Ginger, you also mentioned that you had a list of 15 potential grants, and I just want to let everybody listening that we will share those so that everyone will have that information as well. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear, Ginger, if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is don't wait until the April 20th deadline to go online. Do that in advance of the April 20th date. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I would do that today as quickly as possible so that you will be on that rollout list when they send those applications out, because I foresee that it is going to be a lot like the $10,000 EIDL process that was very quick and easy, 3 pages, 15 minutes it was submitted, and we saw how quickly those funds went away. So I'm hopeful.
That is grant?
This is a grant, yes. Now it is a maximum of $5,000, yes.
So anyone who's interested in that should, as soon as this broadcast is over, should go online to, what is the web address?
It is Save Small Business. I flipped my page just about the time you said that. I want to make sure I give you the right. It is Saves, with an S, savesmallbusiness.com. And I actually have had several of my business owners on the island register themselves today, as well as here in my service area.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for our business support folks joining us this evening? It looks like we might still get a question, but while we're waiting for any of those to come through, we can move forward with our greatest thanks to Ginger and Michael and Matthew and Barry for joining us. And we will move on to our Hyde County Police Department and Hyde County Emergency Management. Do you want to come in a little bit closer? They'll be able to hear you.
All right.
You look right in that big one.
I'll take any questions anybody may have about the sheriff's office here on the island. If anybody has anything. There was a couple questions out in the community about enforcement and stuff of people that were coming over here. I know in the beginning when the county first did their stuff that first weekend, I think we had some people, but that was corrected pretty quick. I've had questions about a sailboat that blowed in here during the storm about it, and we dealt with that. And I think for the most part, people are socially staying apart from each other here on the island. We've not had too many complaints about that. A couple, myself and Blackburn Warner, the other deputy, we are going over to the mainland on the weekends. He's been twice. I'm getting ready to go this weekend with him, help with the road closures that they have over on the mainland. So that's basically what we're doing. We're trying to make least amount of contact with people as possible, business checks and things of that nature. But like I said, I'll answer any questions I can if anybody has anything.
We have a question coming in. Is there any monitoring of the airstrip of people arriving?
There has been monitoring while we're out on duty. If we receive a phone call or you know, that somebody's coming in that needs to be checked to see if they're on the list that the county has, we'll make contact with them. We're not sitting out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, monitoring the airport to see who's flying in. We have had a couple calls, checked a couple people. The Park Service is also helping out with that also.
Yeah, and if I could expand on what Jason said, the National Park Service has jurisdiction over the airport. They actually placed a NOTAM on the airport, which is a notice to airmen that advises them of the travel restrictions to Ocracoke, and anyone flying into the airport, they're advised to contact the Park Service, and we're coordinating directly with them on any concerns about individuals flying into the airport, and it's been a really good working relationship, and I appreciate, you know, what the Sheriff's Office is doing as well.
Justin, would you like to jump in and give any updates? Yes, ma'am. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening and the great presentations that we've received. I especially, you know, like the presentation that the health department gave. They're the technical lead on, you know, public health emergencies as far as emergency management, where we provide more of the operational support. So I'm primarily going to talk about, you know, measures that we've taken to protect our emergency responders, and then any assistance federal assistance that may be available. And I wanted to expand, I know Luana touched on it briefly, but expand on the governor's initiative to stay ahead of the curve. Locally, with regard to emergency operations, we've been working with the Regional Dispatch Center, and they've implemented the emerging infectious disease surveillance tool. So any 911 calls that come in that are of a medical nature, all of those calls are being screened for symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19. If there is a positive screening, then that affects what emergency personnel are being dispatched to those calls. As you all know, I mean, there's a national shortage of medical supplies to support our emergency operations, and our medical providers are critical in the battle. So if there is a positive screening, first responders or individuals that are medically trained with the fire departments are not being dispatched on those calls, just to limit the number of exposures. And also the dispatch center is providing additional information to EMS so they can take universal precautions. In conjunction with that, we implemented a local policy as well in conjunction with the health department. Although we don't have any positive cases in Hyde County right now, if there were positive cases or suspected positives that are awaiting test results, those are being reported to the dispatch center as well, and that would produce a premise alert if any 911 call came in from that location. In addition to what we're doing locally to protect
our emergency personnel, North Carolina was federally declared for public assistance Category B, which is emergency protective measures. I don't know that many people are aware, but nonprofit agencies are eligible for public assistance. So any entity that has a 501c(d) or E designation, if they're taking any emergency protective measures or providing services related to COVID-19, they are eligible for public assistance from FEMA. And in order to apply, they would need to send an email to PA Hotline at ncem.org. Again, that's PA Hotline at ncem.org. And they would just need to provide the organization name, the point of contact, and their information to be linked up with state public assistance individuals. Since you know, we have social distancing measures being implemented across the nation, FEMA is not dispatching individuals to do preliminary damage assessments. All of that is being done remotely through the state. So they would be put in contact with a grants manager that would help them through the process of filing any expenses that are related to the services that they're providing. And then lastly, I just wanted to kind of expand on what Luana touched on as far as the governor's initiative, the staying ahead of the curve. On the 14th, the governor charted a path forward for eventually easing certain COVID-19 restrictions while still protecting North Carolinians from a dangerous second wave of the virus. Expert modeling has shown it would be dangerous to lift the restrictions all at once because it would increase the chances that hospitals would become overwhelmed and unable to care for severely ill patients. Governor Cooper emphasized that changes in restrictions must protect public health, especially those who are most vulnerable to severe illness, including people over age 65, those with underlying health conditions, and people living in congregate settings. In order to ease the restrictions, the state needs to make more progress in 3 areas: testing, tracing, and trends. More specifically, with regard to testing, state planning relies on an increase in testing capabilities to identify, isolate, and track new cases of COVID-19. That means having the supplies and lab capacity to do more testing across the state. Dr. Mandy Cohen, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, has brought together laboratory partners from the public and private sector to coordinate efforts to ensure testing, diagnostic, and antibody is widely available across the state while also conserving protective equipment. Tracing requires the state to boost the public health workforce and ability to trace contacts of new cases of COVID-19. Contact tracing can be effective at containing new outbreaks, but it requires more personnel. When a person is test positive, the tracing efforts will help identify who that individual may have been in contact with, so those people can get tested and take the right precautions. NCDHHS is working with its partners to increase this critical piece of our public health workforce, and new digital tools are being implemented and can also help scale those efforts. Trends: in order to ease restrictions, the state needs to understand how COVID-19 is impacting the state and impacting specific populations and regions of the state to determine when to strengthen or ease social distancing policies. Trends that will influence policy decisions will be based on data like new positive cases, hospitalizations, deaths, as well as available supply of personal protective equipment and hospital capacity. But as Luana said, and I want to reiterate, our greatest resource in battling COVID-19 is, people staying at home and staying distanced to stop that spread. So everyone that's listening, and you're a critical part in that, and also, making sure to look out for your loved ones and your friends and neighbors is really important, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to stay ahead of the curve. That completes my presentation, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. So we do have two questions. It looks like they're both for Chef Daniels. The first question is, if you see people walking out in the community close together, do you mention the social distancing requirements to them?
At times, yes. I've noticed people walking in the mornings in groups of 2 or 3 for health benefits, and a lot of them's been doing really well, and they got their 6-foot distance in front of them. Between them. I have noticed a couple basketball one-on-one games or something like that on the basketball court. We'll go shut that down. They're not supposed to be doing that, so we'll go say, hey, y'all need to, if you're shooting on this end with your ball, you shoot here with your ball and keep your 6 foot. That's kind of what we've been doing. I encourage people here on the island that if they do see behavior out in public, that's groups of people together, that's less than their 6 foot, and it looks like it's going against what we're supposed to be doing, to call the sheriff's office, and we'll go deal with it. We're going to not see everything, but if you call, we'll do our best to go deal with it. It is a Class 2 misdemeanor to not follow what the governor's orders were, and we'll try to do everything to enforce that the best we can. Is there another question?
And the second question is, if I'm a contractor working on the island, can I bring a family member with me, a child or a spouse?
Not supposed to. I don't think if they're here already, you'll have to go through the county, through the vetting process, putting anybody back over here after that date, whenever that date was, to do the vetting process through the county office there, Teresa and them. So right now, they may have a hard time getting through the roadblocks or through the ferry to get here.
I can touch on that a little too, Sarah.
Thank you.
We have an online application process that goes through contractors and non-resident property owners that are doing work on their house with a building permit. They are not supposed to bring anybody with them unless they're actively working on the project. The ferry division does have a list of all individuals that are authorized to be over. So if some people snuck by and got onto the island before everything got locked down, they're still there. But if they leave the island, they're not getting back.
I had that question the other day from an individual that had been here for 5 or 6 weeks, and he asked me, can I leave and come back? And I told him no, unless he goes through the vetting process that the county got set up. So he's just been staying here.
And that's accurate. He did try to get a pass from us, and it was denied.
Any other questions for Jason Daniels or Justin Gibbs from the community? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Sarah.
So next up on our agenda, we have updates from Hyde County with Commissioner Tom Paul and County Manager Chris Noble.
Good evening. I'm going to hand it off to Chris because I know
Tom, can I
she has
pause
a
you for
particular...
one more moment? There's one additional question. I apologize.
Oh, sure, no problem.
There's a question, if someone does have to be arrested and taken to jail, what is the plan, given this circumstance?
For breaking for any crime, or
It's unspecific.
if we take somebody to jail like I did the other day, we're gonna treat them just like any other situation. We're gonna do our job. Put them in handcuffs, take them to jail. If he can bond out, he'll bond out. If not, we'll take them to Dare County Detention Center. That's just like with anything else.
Okay.
So that would be how that's how we're, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to Hyde County now. Tom Paul and Chris Noble, you're up.
Sure, thank you. And I'm going to hand it off to Chris real quickly because I know she has a topic that she wants to talk about that I think is pretty critical to everyone regarding unemployment insurance. But I would like to say thank you to OCBA and to Donnie Shoemate for putting this together. I think this is really important to have the opportunity to meet as a community in a town meeting format, even under these circumstances, is very, very well done, everyone. And I may very well have some additional comments, but I'd like to hand it off to Chris right now.
Hi, everybody. I have a wide variety of items that I thought I'd give you an update on tonight. And I'm not quite sure what you wanted me to present, but I put together a little hodgepodge of everything we've been working on. Well, if I could start with our original disaster, which is our Hurricane Dorian disaster, we've been working diligently to seek funding sources over the last couple of months, and especially the last several weeks. If you'll remember, we were able to get a small pot of money from the Office of State Budget Management, which we worked with the Long-Term Recovery Group for some temporary short-term individual assistance. This week, we've been working together, myself and Ms. Teresa Adams, to put together our hazard mitigation grant program funding. We have 114 applications that are going into an application to the state that'll then be passed up to FEMA for elevation work. And so we've been working diligently to get that HMGP grant in for those 114, hopefully, potential elevations and reconstructions. We have also accepted Golden Leaf funding to rebuild a new EMS station there on the island, and also funding to replace our trams that were damaged in Hurricane Dorian. And so we're really looking at two different types of recovery funding: the short-term recovery funding, which was the money that we've been working with the Long-Term Recovery Group for rental assistance and things to get people back up on their feet after Dorian. And now we're looking at some more long-term recovery, housing reconstructions, elevations. We'll be working with Hometown Strong beginning early next week to brainstorm to see if we can come up with other program fits for Hyde County. We are finishing up our debris project over there and repairing the areas where we did have stored debris. We're working to get all that information to FEMA and get reimbursed for that, which is quite a task. But we've been working through that. And then the rollover from where we were with Dorian, and we still are with Dorian, and going into the COVID-19 crisis. Of course, we're working closely with Ms. Luana at the Health Department and Justin in EMS and Emergency Management, and they're great leads, and we're following their leads and supporting them every way we can. We did have a lot of activity earlier this month in regard to entry into Ocracoke Island and the whole county in general, and we limited visitors first. That didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel like a comfortable amount of people on the island. They still felt like we had too many people, the general citizenry. We then limited non-resident property owner access, and it still seemed like there were just far too many people traveling from far too many places and congregating in too tight of a space. And so our final move was to limit non-resident property owners to those that were still recovering from Dorian and had active building permits. And that seemed to put the level of people on the island and traveling to and from the island to a place that we felt was manageable if we were to also practice safe distancing. So that's where we are with the island right now. And then we also did come in and we put in a mainland visitor restriction, and that seems to be working over here. We still are allowing non-resident property owners on the mainland. They will have to have a reentry permit, and both the Ocracoke reentry permit and the mainland reentry permit are on the website. And I send a huge shout out to Donnie Shumay, our IT director, for getting those two digital reentry permit processes online so quickly, and him and Miss Teresa Adams for working diligently to answer those permit requests. They're working day and night, weekends, and we really appreciate that. We have closed our county offices to the public to protect and also to, slow the curve. We're still offering all the services we did before. We're trying to be as creative and innovative as we can to still serve the public. You can't enter the building, and there's a telephone there where you can access the office that you'd like to speak to, set up appointments with the Registered Deeds office, the Clerk of Court's office, and we can work with the tax office with a drop box. And so we're still there. Building inspections is making appointments to see people and trying to do everything digitally. So we're really trying to change the way we work to still serve the public at the highest level, but to maintain that distancing, keep our staff safe, and keep the general public safe. There will be a press release coming out in the next couple of days in regard to the Board of Equalization and Review. There was a lot of concern in regard to our tax assessments for the coming year with all the damage that came from Hurricane Dorian, and rightly so that we make sure that you're taxed this coming tax year by the condition of your property as of January 1st, 2020. And we will be issuing a press release hopefully in the next couple of days. We're working on the wording now that'll tell people how, if you did not get a readjustment for your tax value and you believe you deserve a readjustment, how you can get onto the schedule for the Board of Equalization and Review. And we're going to work with you just as cooperatively as possible to make sure that that's a fair and a fair amount moving forward, and you're not overtaxed for your property. We're going to have some changes coming up on our May board meeting in regard to flood maps. We'll have a public hearing, and that information I'm working with Donnie to get on our website, as well as a couple of potential changes to the Ocracoke Development Ordinance will be on our website, that proposed language, and that will also be in the May meeting. One particular question that I had for tonight, prior to tonight, was I've received so many comments from business owners and the general citizens there. We had just come out of Dorian, and now we've rolled right into a second disaster, and so we have two big issues right now in regard to assistance, and I really appreciate the presentation that Michael and Matthew and Barry and Miss Ginger did in regard to the resources that are available, but we're still falling a little bit short in regard to Ocracoke because we just came out of Dorian. So a lot of people their unemployment benefits are expended and they don't have those unemployment benefits moving forward to cope with COVID-19. Also, when they're applying for the SBA and other types of assistance programs for small businesses, their financial data is skewed because they're looking at last year's financial data, which really got cut short and cannot really adequately show what the true economic injury is in regard to those folks. So we're working really diligently right now with as many federal and state partners as we can. We've been able to make contact with Congressman Greg Murphy's office, also Senator Steinberg, Bobby Hanig. We've had outreach from the governor's office and also Senator Tillerson Burr. We do have phone conferences set up with Senator Tillis's office tomorrow and with the governor's office tomorrow so that we can look at how we can potentially correct those oversights and see what we can do to potentially get some additional help for Ocracoke, because we are caught in that catch-22 basically between two disasters. And I hope that we're able to get some more information out to you all in the near future in regard to some potential additional resources because of that. And that's what I have. And so I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about anything else that you might want to know about.
I do have a couple questions, Chris. The first question is about our convenience site. It seems that it has been overwhelmed with post-Dorian construction since the end of the FEMA roadside pickup. Can we pick up the pace at the site? How do we pay for it? That the site staff is doing a great job, thumbs up to them, but it seems like we need more trips for hauling.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that actually, because I just got a Cng Canister update about 5:30 this afternoon. We did hit a little bit of a glitch there about a week and a half ago, and we were having to pace the amount of trash we were putting at the convenience site because of the C&D containers. I think we've addressed that. I think that we had a little bit of extra capacity as of late this afternoon, and we're sending over canisters tomorrow, and we're going to be lined up so that we can have multiple C&D containers there on site. So I don't think that's going to continue. I think we had to get a little bit of a learning curve to how much volume, and I think we've learned and we know now that we need multiple containers being swapped out multiple times a week, and I think that we're going to be able to do that.
Chris, can you also address the award of a contract for a new supplier for services at the convenience site?
Sure, I'm happy to. We did at our May meeting, at our April meeting, award a new contract, a 5-year contract to Republic Services. We were able to go out and issue a request for proposals in February. We received 5 very competitive proposals, which we had a team and we ranked them by a number of things: price, responsiveness. There was a criteria points-based system, and we chose Republic Services. They've got a pretty good track record. We're looking forward to working with them. Their contract will go into effect on June 1st. And David's Trash has been very admirable in servicing us and helping with that transition as Republic Lead comes in and David's pulls out. They've been really good to us about coming up with a transitional plan. And they've committed to us to help us with the C&D containers until that time. And also we have additional resource with Redbox.
Thanks.
Seems like there is some discussion about the property tax evaluation that you were speaking of, Chris. And the question specifically was if property tax is assessed on January 1st of this year, we're in now mid-April. The question was how is that reassessed? I would assume it would be on the next year, but if you could just address that a little bit.
Justin, are you still on the line?
Yes, ma'am.
Justin, we wear many hats in the Hyde County government, and Justin is not only our emergency manager and EMS director, but he also serves a critical role in the tax office. And I was mentioning the press release because I want everybody to listen, to be on the lookout. But Justin, can you address those questions?
Yeah, I know it may be somewhat confusing, but we don't actually bill for taxes until like September. So when those bills go out, they're actually for your property as it existed on January 1 of 2020. So we actually had appraisers go out and do new pickups and also work from our building permit list from Dorian and try to pick up properties that were damaged and kind of what phase or percentage they were in as far as their repairs were concerned. If you were picked up through that process, then you should have gotten a reevaluation notice where your property taxes were adjusted for 2020. But if you did not receive a notice and you feel like you deserve an adjustment based on the damages you received from Dorian, then the Board of E&R would be your, of Equalization and Review would be your opportunity to have those adjustments made. So shortly, which we've already started to receive inquiries, but that will be opened up and people will be able to sign up for slots to present to the Board of E&R any adjustment concerns that they have. And also, I know here in the tax office, they're working very diligently, to try to address some of those concerns before it ever even goes to the Board of E&R. I know we had an individual reach out by mail that was received today, and we went ahead and made adjustments to their 2020 value. So I know it's a bit confusing as far as how it's billed, but we actually won't bill for your property until around September.
Is that bid
Justin.
review going to be done remotely?
I'm sure there will probably be additional measures taken since we'll most likely be still in social distancing. It would probably be something very much like this where we would schedule, a conference call or something where the individual could dial in and present their concerns to the Board of E&R.
Justin, can you review the process that someone might want to go through if they had a concern about their valuation? Exactly what should someone do if they've experienced damage and they feel like their valuation needs to be adjusted?
So I know that we're getting ready to send out a press release, but ahead of that, calling the tax office and discussing the issue with them. They may be able to make adjustments before it has to go to the Board of E&R, but if it ultimately does, they would be the ones to schedule those presentations to the board.
Thanks.
Tom, would you like to speak for a moment? Is there something that?
Sure. Chris did a great job of bringing you all up to date on everything that's going on. And just to be clear, what trying to deal with two crises at the same time, Hurricane Dorian and of course the pandemic, but also just continue to run the county. So it's a huge job, and I'm very much impressed with the work that's going on. Chris and all the staff is really digging in and doing a great job. I did want to mention that the issue of reopening, of revitalizing our economy, not just here on the island, but in the area, in the region, and in the state, and regionally within the country, is an important issue, and it's one that we've been having some conversations about. So and I only mention that to say that while we're dealing with the sort of day-to-day issues that we're all addressing, we're also looking ahead and thinking about, as the governor mentioned, how are ways that we can ease into a lifting of these restrictions and try to put the economy back together, and at the same time to address the personal protection issues that we need to address regarding COVID, and to continue the recovery from Hurricane Dorian. It's a huge job, and I think everybody on the island deserves a lot of credit for what we've had to put up with, and the grace and generosity that's been shown here on the island. Thank you.
Thank you both, Tom and Chris. I'll do a call for any additional questions for County Commissioner Tom Paul or County Manager Chris Noble. Well, if you all want to stay on the line for a bit, and if we get any questions popped up, I will pass them along. But next up on our agenda is going to be Jed Dixon with the Ferry Division. Jed, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm on.
Hi, Jed. You can go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. Just got a short update. As you guys know, we've implemented procedures to help with combat the spread of COVID-19. Those procedures consist of asking that the passengers on board the ferry stay in their vehicles during the travel if possible. And we're also rotating a vessel out of service to do some deep cleaning each day to make sure that we're protecting the passengers and the crew on the ferries. We've limited, we're on a restricted schedule now due to COVID-19, and we have been on that since March 30th. We are monitoring the traffic, and as restrictions are starting lifting, we'll adjust the schedule accordingly. We are working to bring on our summer camps. We have getting approvals for those now in anticipation for our summer season, getting everyone ready to go. And that's really my only updates. I've been working with Hyde County and making sure that we're following all the restriction orders in place for Ocracoke, and I think that's going well, and I appreciate the assistance from the Sheriff's Office and Justin's team at Emergency Management. So that's it for my update.
Jed, you were a bit muffled during the part where you were talking about the summer. Would you kindly repeat that?
We're making preparations to get our seasonal temporaries approved, and we're getting those folks approved and ready to work. So when the situation does improve and when restrictions are lifted, we'll have our full staff needed to run our normal summer schedule that we've got listed. So we're doing that now, and we don't anticipate any problems getting those folks on board now.
Thank you, Jed. I'm going to make a call for questions, and I do have a question for you, Jed.
Yes.
Is there any impact from COVID-19 on the progress of the passenger ferry?
We are monitoring the situation with the COVID-19, and we're going to lease the vessel again this year, and it just depends on where we are with restrictions. It looks like we're definitely going to have an abbreviated season from what we originally planned. So I can't give you a definite answer on that at this time, and it will be something we'll have to keep an eye on when I get back with you. But we were hoping to start the passenger ferry season the third week of May, but with restrictions in place, it's just difficult to say when we're going to start the service this year.
It looks like that's all the questions for the ferry division. If you want to hang on the line for just 2 or 3 minutes in case another question pops up. And we thank you so much. We thank you so much for joining.
Thank you guys very much.
Last on our agenda this evening is Mark Dowdle, who's the Deputy Superintendent with the NPS. Mark, are you with us?
Good evening. This is Mark Dowdle. My camera is not working, but can you hear me okay?
Very well, yes.
Great. Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share some updates with you. I think a bit of good news is that even though a lot of national park sites across the United States have had to shut down completely, we've been very pleased to be able to both support Hyde County's restrictions, but also keep outdoor park areas open. So all of the roads, trails, beaches, all outdoor areas of Cape Hatteras National Seashore are open for people to enjoy. And it's great to see people to be able to have the opportunity to get outdoors during these difficult times. Our indoor areas have been closed. That includes our visitor centers and bathrooms. And we are working, we have a contractor on the island right now working on the visitor center. And this is part of our Hurricane Dorian recovery efforts. We're really happy to be able to see these repairs continue, and we're hoping that the repair work in the visitor center will be done by the end of May. And whether we'll be able to open the visitor center after that is sort of really a wait and see on that right now related to COVID-19. We are moving ahead with a contract for lifeguard services for the summer, but again, we don't know when that might start. Some of the other projects that we have ongoing, the comfort station at the beach access, the work continues on that. That contract has been a bit behind schedule, but we do hope to have that open or ready to open by Memorial Day this year if we're able to do that. And we have been working with our federal highways partners. They've been working on road, what we call pavement preservation throughout the seashore. And what that is where there's pavement that's not completely ready to be completely milled up and repaved, they can do a process called chip sealing that will help preserve that pavement and improve it, but also preserve it. They haven't come down to Ocracoke yet to do that work, but we anticipate probably within the next couple of weeks they'll arrive on Ocracoke. They'll start with what they call crack sealing. They'll put the substance in the cracked areas to help repair those, and then they'll put that chip seal surface on top of that. That'll be a lot of our parking areas, including around the campground, the beach access area, the boat ramp, the visitor center area. So we're looking forward to seeing that work progress. This, I think, is a good time to get that work done before the larger crowds return. And all of the off-road vehicle ramps are open. We have at the 15th of April, yesterday, we converted all of our seasonal ramps and routes over to their summertime configuration. On Ocracoke, that only affects ramp 68. And we've been doing some, I think, innovative things with trying to reach out to people who might want to come visit the seashore, but just can't do that right now. So we are doing a lot of to improve what we call the virtual experience on our park website and our social media sites, particularly Facebook. And we have some videos, recorded ranger programs, lesson plans for teachers. So we're continuing to build upon that and making the most of the time that we have to be productive and to reach out to people however we can. I think that's the bulk of our update. Certainly we're happy to be able to support Hyde County and a number of our partners with a number of special use permits, certainly Hurricane Dorian recovery efforts, the Thailand project to replace poles along the island, and NCDOT's South Dock project, and also the dune repair along Highway 12. All those are progressing well. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
I have a question for Jed. I have a question for Mark, and I also have a question for Tom and Chris. So Mark, since you're on the line, would you like to start?
Sure.
The question is, when will the Lifeguard Beach parking lot reopen?
Yes, so part of that, well, that parking lot was originally going to be part of the Federal Highways Pavement Preservation, and they were going to chip seal that. They can't do that right now because the parking lot's got a little bit of wear and tear on it from the debris staging. So we're working with Hyde County to get some repairs done on that, and then we'll be able to open it back up for people to. I don't have a specific date, but we are working towards it.
Okay. The people are expressing gratitude for keeping the beach open too, especially during this time. I have a question. Jed, are you still on the line?
He's not.
Okay, we lost Jed Dixon. So there's a question about the repair timeline for the ferries, and we'll have to catch up with him later on that. There's a question, and I think, Chris, you were talking about this earlier, the grant program for house elevations. So the question is, what is the status of the funding for raising homes? Some have been approved for money from Michael and Florence, and it's still being held up a little bit. I think you touched on that, but maybe if you could just come back to that. This is for the grant program for raising homes.
Sure. There are a number of grant programs to elevate homes. We are currently putting in an application for hazard mitigation grant funding. There's also flood mitigation grant funding. There's pre-disaster mitigation assistance. But one thing that these programs have in common is that this is typically money that the county will take applications from homeowners, and we'll put together an application to the state of North Carolina, who puts together an application to FEMA, and then FEMA reviews those applications, and then the money comes back down to the state and down to the county. And so I'll be really honest with you, it is a lengthy process, and it takes years. Do not be disillusioned that you're going to apply today and have your house raised tomorrow, and there's no matter of diligence that's going to speed that up. I'll just be very frank with you. Hazard mitigation grant funding is for people that is their last resort and only resort, because it can take years. We are finishing up right now Irene rescopement projects. We have not yet even started any Matthew projects or Florence projects. And so that it is not instant and it's not instantaneous. And so any type of federal funding that passes down from the state to the county, it takes years for that type of funding to come through. I don't think we have any Michael projects. I've never seen any of that come across my desk, but we do have Irene, Matthew, and Florence right now. Now, we did get really lucky in regard to Dorian, and we were able to submit our 114 Dorian applications into Florence applications. And so what could typically be a 2-year process could be reduced down to a 1-year process. And so what I can tell you is that it's not instant and it's not going to come fast. But for those that have no other option, I would still pursue hazard mitigation grant funding. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone that joined this evening. Even in spite of our technical difficulties, we are still ahead of schedule, almost by 20 minutes. So that's great. Thank you all so much. Our next Civic meeting will be on May 13th at 6 p.m. And assuming that the situation is as it is now, we will set up another similar platform to do this meeting online. And we have one more question that's just popped up. Okay, it's a question for Mark. Are you still on the phone with NPS?
I am still with you.
The question is about Lifeguard Beach. And then even if we can't park at the Lifeguard Beach, are people allowed to walk up to the ramp because it is an easily accessible access point?
To walk up through the parking lot to get to the beach. Is that the question?
Yes. Are you allowed to walk up the ramp to get to the beach? For the Lifeguard Beach, even if you don't park there?
I don't see why not. I will follow up with Ed Fuller because I'm not quite sure if there are barricades across there or what that quite looks like. I haven't been able to get down there myself for the past month. With that, and how can I get that information back to everyone?
You can send it to me and I can include it in the Civic meeting notes.
Okay, sure will.
Thank you so much.
We'll do everything to provide the easiest access for folks. Thank you.
Sarah, can I just reiterate how grateful we are that the beaches are open? It's just such a wonderful thing. You know, we're all under so much stress to be able to go to the beach and take a little bit of time, go for a walk. It's just great that the beaches are open. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad people are able to get out and enjoy it.
Well, thank you everyone so much. Please stay safe and well and enjoy the weekend. And we appreciate you taking the time to participate. And a special thanks again to Donnie for assisting all of us to learn a new technology, and it seemed to work very well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, OCBA, and thank you, Donnie. Well done.
My pleasure, and I'll just add that I will be posting a copy of this meeting video to the Hyde County website tomorrow morning once I get the final editing done on that, so it'll be available on our website as well.
Great. Thank you.
There, if that's all, I'll end the broadcast.
Yes, thanks, Donnie. Good night.
Thank you.